Hi, my name is Larry Morrison. I'm a native of Ballymore in County Sligo. I'm now presently living in Dublin the last 35, 40 years. My grandfather was in the RIC. He was stationed in Belfast. And my granduncle, James Murren, he also was in the RIC. But unfortunately, he was shot in June 1921 in Milltown in Galway. Yes, he was born on the 28th of July 1873 in a townland called Lisnawr, 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 Kilconly, County Sligo. His father's name was Michael Murren and his mother's name was Bridget Tolan, T-U-L-A-N. He was 21 years of age and 9 months when he joined the RIC. His height was 5 foot 10 inches and he's from Sligo. His reg number is 57292. He was recommended for that position by the head constable, Michael Kavanagh, who is based in Kilconly, County Sligo. He joined the RIC on the 15th of 11th, 1895, and he was allocated to Galway West Riding on the 22nd of the 4th, 1896. 22nd of the 4th, 1896. He served in a place called Castle Grove, Castle Haggett, Corrafin, and Glenamaddy. He was promoted acting sergeant on the 1st of August 1916 and then promoted to sergeant on the 1st of March 1918. He was an unmarried man, single all his life. He was 47 years of age when he was shot in an ambush in Milltown, himself and Constable Day. Two other constables, one was injured and the other guy escaped. He's buried in a graveyard called Templemore in County Sligo with his family members. There's no headstone there. Yes.
So Murren died during the War of Independence in an ambush by the IRA in Milltown. Can you tell us what you know about this ambush?
James Murren was due to retire on the previous Sunday, but his papers had never come through. Some problem with the papers, a delay. So he switched a shift with somebody else and he was out on the beat with 3 other constables when they were ambushed at a short distance from the station. As I said, he was fatally wounded and another constable was shot dead and another guy was wounded. See, I'm just checking records here. The second damage took place at place Knockmore, C-N-O-C-H, Knockmore, 20 yards from the Milltown side of the station on the Milltown-Kilgarvan Road. The ambushers were a flying squad, which included several local volunteers under the command of a man called Tom Dunleavy. They lay in ambush on the side of the road on the Davros side of the road. There were 4 men on patrol, said James Murren, Constable Day. The third man was named called Carter. He escaped injury as he lay lying on the road, prone on the road, and returned fire to the attackers. When the shots were heard by the members in the station, they came out to support the other constables and the ambushers then fled from the scene. Carter continued on patrol in that area for some time afterwards. That's the lad who wasn't injured.
And Larry, have you ever visited Milltown where the ambush took place?
Yes, I did. I was down there about 6 years ago. I met yourselves, Wally and another guy, and it brought me up to the scene of the ambush. Now, the road structure had changed slightly from the time the ambush took place, but I was actually at the scene where the ambush took place. Also, recently I discovered his grave in Sligo, and unfortunately, because of the lockdown, I can't visit it, but I will as soon as this clears up, this virus is over. I will go down and visit where he's buried in Sligo.
We recently spoke to Peter Brennan, whose uncle was on the IRA side during the ambush. And he mentioned that Murren was a Republican sympathiser. And because of this, he was walking at the front of the patrol. Does this tally with your research?
There's no record of his family ever being involved in Republican sympathies, never, no whatsoever. Now, it's interesting to bring up that because when my grandfather was stationed, he was stationed in Belfast, and when he came down for the funeral, the local IRA in Sligo were intent on killing him. But some word came from Belfast to them not to touch this man, that he was, his wife was, well, would be sympathy, I wouldn't say support, sympathy, in that if there's any trouble in Belfast, she would let the people in the front door, not the back door. They lived in a place called 7 Derby Street, Belfast at that time. I'm not saying he had Republican sympathy, but he had respect, let's say, and that came from Belfast to leave this man alone. He's okay. But I never heard of the other side about Murren being involved. No, never.
So I have a newspaper article here from late 1921 that states Murren's parents were awarded £1,230 as compensation for Murren's death. Did you ever hear of the effect that his death had on his family?
I can't comment on that, but I can show you a letter that my grandmother received, who was his brother. It dated on 10th of November 1921, and it's from it's called Patrick S. Goldrick. The Dublin address is 24 Ann Street, Dublin, but he also has an office in Galway, in Francis Street, Galway. Where that is, I don't know, just Francis Street in Galway. But it reads, Murren deceased, Dear Sir, will you kindly let me have the names and addresses of your 5 children, yours faithfully, P. Golding, addressed to my grandfather, Constable Patrick Mulligan, 7 Derby Street, Belfast. Now, maybe there's some compensation coming from there, but that is an official letter I have. No, I never heard about Murren getting money. I can't comment on that. I don't know, but I have that letter there, which my grandfather got, would be his brother-in-law. It was terrible times at that time. Like all these people that were murdered, they were Catholic and were farmers' sons. They were native Irish people, and there was no work here, so to either immigrate to Australia or America or take up a job here, sort of thing. And they chose to stay at home and work here. But by and large, they had a respect in the community. Now, I know this will be contrary to what people may think, but by and large, they tried to keep the peace as best they could, because that time, apart from the IRA, there was other troublesome in Ireland all over, the faction fights and people making poaching. There's just aggro all over the place, I think, and that's something you have to deal with even now today, apart from anything else. Politics, that element is in society. So you have no choice in that, unfortunately.
Was James a Catholic and a farmer's son?
Yes, he was. He was a Catholic and farmer's son, as was my grandfather. They were, yeah. Quite a lot of people from around Sligo were farmer's sons. There's 2 more from Kilconly. They were also farmer's sons that I'm aware of. And it's a funny story. In one of them, Churchill's his name, he was in the RIC. He got into some trouble and he was dismissed. And then he joined the British Army in India. And he saved somebody's life over there. So he's back being staged again. So there's funny stories and the sad stories right through the life of the RIC.
We came across another article where James arrested somebody for robbing in Milltown train station. Have you seen this article?
No, I haven't. No. I haven't seen that at all. No, I haven't. As I say, what I have here, Pauline, is there's a document I have here about his service record. It's the Royal Irish Constabulary Registry extract, Public Records Office, Kew, Richmond, Surrey, in England. That's a record of all his service. Right through. There's the booklet written by Jim Hurley, but so the RICs. It's a fantastic read, and it gives a breakdown of all the members who were killed on duty, and the various ranks of the RIC as well. So it's good like that.
Larry, are you a guard? Did you follow in your family's footsteps?
Yes, I did. I ended up a detective sergeant in the National Drug Unit in Dublin, so I'm retired now 10 years. So I followed, and my daughter's in the guards as well. So it's a tradition coming down the line. So I'm in the guards. I suppose maybe it is a certain element on me joining the fact that my grandfather and my granduncle were in the RIC, and my godfather would have talked about them over the years, so things had happened, and he's since deceased now. But stories like that I'd have learned from him in the beginning about him. I never, before he came on board at all, he was telling me about him being shot a week after him retiring, and the papers hadn't come through. And I found that, difficult to understand. This poor man shouldn't have been working at all when this happened, and he switched with somebody else. Who he switched, I don't know at all. But it's just one of those sad things in life that happens, And he's a single man. At that time, you had to be 19 years of age and no older than 27 to join the RIC. Now, if you're an RIC's son, you could join at 18. You had to be single as well. You couldn't be married. Or if you're a widow without kids, children, yes, you were allowed to join as well in those circumstances. So it's just quite strict sort of thing, and you weren't allowed to serve in your own area. You were transferred out of it sort of thing. So they're quite strict in their own way.
Do you have any more stories about James Murren that you've heard from your family?
No, nothing more than I told you. You see, the time we lived in that time, Pauline, it was difficult. People wouldn't talk about it. So in recent years, people are talking about RIC, and it took some time to dig back through some of this stuff. And it was just my uncle was telling me his stories about his own father and about his uncle, who was also his godfather. And it piqued my interest then when I heard this, and I started to do a bit of research myself. But he did give me the memorial cards and those letters, sort of thing, from back 100 years ago now. So it's this year. It's great to have them. No, unfortunately, didn't have any more. People didn't talk about it. It was a funny time. People didn't talk about things that time. They're more open now. And, people they wouldn't talk that time. I don't know why it was. They just wouldn't talk. My opinion is that during that time, this is the 60s now, I was a young lad at home, and the local rate collector would come around collecting the rates. But he also was involved in the IRA, and my uncle said he was involved in that team that was supposed to shoot my grandfather at the time. So I'm sure it was sort of my mother's room, seeing this man come into our house collecting the rates, and him said one of the people supposed to kill her father. Now, it didn't happen. I said the word came from Belfast not to shoot him. That was one of the stories from that time that was told. So it was a sad time. Like, couldn't attend the relative funerals without being threatened to be shot.
The RIC, they get a bad reputation these days. Do you think it's unfair when you think about your ancestors that they get a bad reputation?
They have got a bad reputation, and I've read a lot of the stories, what happened, and apparently there were reprisals, like some RIC were shot, and then there was reprisals against known Republicans, which is wrong as well, bringing before the law. But then again, there's no law in the country at that time, so everything had broken down in 1920, 21, around that time. So I suppose there was revenge attacks by RIC on known Republicans that were believed to be involved in atrocities against the RIC. Wrong. That's wrong. It's a law there. It should be enforced, and that's it. Again, a lot of the called the Black and Tans, they were getting a bad name. They actually were soldiers who had fought in the First World War and had been through a very serious time over there. And they came back then to England, and there was no other job for them either. It's like the Irish farmers' sons here was either immigrate or work, so they got a job assisting the RIC here in Ireland. But they never went out on their own. They were also supervised by somebody from the RIC. That was the rule at the time. As I said, I got that book there of Jim Hurley's. I read a lot of it, and it was a very disciplined organisation at that time, regardless of the atrocity that was committed. And as I said, a lot of the RIC men formed police forces in Canada, Australia, in India, all over the place. Even in Ghana, right, which was a British colony at the time. Apart from England modelled their police force on the standards set here. And there was a survey done by some this guy from England. He toured Ireland at the time. He travelled around, mostly around Cork, and he visited the stations, and he was very impressed with what he saw and what's been carried on. And it's a matter of public record, all this, which is in that book, can be seen in that book. So, you'll always hear the bad stories. Good stories don't sell papers. Bad stories will. Even today, I see Jesus, you sell it. No one know, but you want to know a bad story. He said that, and then my mother always said, paper refuses ink. That's the bottom line, really, isn't it?
And Larry, was he buried in his hometown?
He was, yeah, he was. That would be his native. Kilconly would be the main town to his town land, but that graveyard is outside of Kilconly. You know, some of the countries you have these churches out in the middle of nowhere and graveyard, so he's buried there in a family plot. There are other graves there as well. The grave is called Templemore, I believe. That Templemore graveyard is called.